All right, ready to dive deep into some Enneagram compatibility today?
Always.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We've got a really interesting pairing to unpack. Enneagram 1, the reformer, and Enneagram 5, the investigator.
Yeah. On the surface, they might seem like an odd couple.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You've got the one with their drive for perfection and order, right? Like
Right.
radiating leadership energy.
Yeah, definitely.
Then you have the 5, our knowledge seeker, who loves to get lost in information and really values their alone time.
That's right. It's almost like watching a nature documentary about a symbiotic relationship.
Oh, I like that.
Two completely different organisms thriving because of their differences.
Okay, I'm hooked already.
Yeah.
But can these two really make a lasting connection? Could their differences actually be the secret ingredient? What do you think?
Well, one thing that definitely stands out is their shared love of logic and objectivity.
Right. Like they speak the same language.
Exactly. The language of facts and analysis. Picture them having these amazing conversations, dissecting theories, and going on these mental adventures together.
So less about romantic dinners and more about museum dates and late night debates about the universe.
Exactly. They both value logic, but the one applies it to the tangible world. Like they want to create order and fix what they see as flawed.
I see.
But the 5, they take that same logic and dive deep into knowledge, analyzing everything from a more theoretical point of view.
So it's like two sides of the same coin. Fascinating. But wouldn't that lead to some clashes, especially when it comes to problem solving?
For sure. Imagine them trying to plan a trip.
Okay. Yeah.
The 1E1 is already making the perfect itinerary.
Color coding spreadsheets, researching the most ethical travel options.
Exactly. And meanwhile, the 5 is down a rabbit hole of historical facts about the destination.
Oh my gosh. Maybe even questioning if the mode of transport is the most fuel efficient based on like some complex algorithm.
Right. They could drive each other a little crazy. But there's also potential for some real magic.
Okay, I could see that. But what about everyday life, like sharing a living space? Would it be a constant battle between clutter and, super organization?
Well, remember, 5s value knowledge, so that often means books, papers, maybe a bit of organized chaos in their space.
So stacks of books next to a perfectly arranged spice rack.
Exactly. The Fado-one's first instinct might be to, tidy up that perceived chaos.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the beauty of this pairing is that both types respect each other's need for structure and independent exploration. So you might see designated zones.
Like a perfectly organized kitchen and a creative chaos study.
Precisely. Now, when it comes to emotions, things get a bit more complex.
Okay, yeah. Enneagram 1s are known for their strong moral compass. I imagine that influences how they approach relationships. How does that mesh with the 5 who might be more reserved with their feelings?
That's a great point. We often hear the term sapiosexual, and it's really relevant here.
Oh, interesting.
It basically means finding intelligence incredibly attractive. And both these types really prioritize that intellectual connection over fleeting emotions.
So late-night philosophical debates are their version of a romantic walk on the beach.
Exactly. However, the 1, while valuing logic, still craves that heart-to-heart connection. They want to know what their partner is feeling, to dive into those emotional depths. But the 5 might struggle with expressing those emotions openly.
I see.
They process things internally, which can leave the 1 feeling like their emotional needs aren't being met.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like they're speaking different love languages, even if they both enjoy a good intellectual sparring match. So communication is key here.
Absolutely. The 5 needs to understand that the 5's emotional expression might come through actions or thoughtful gestures rather than big declarations. And the 5 would benefit from, making an effort to articulate their feelings, even if it feels uncomfortable.
It's about finding a balance, a way to communicate in a language they both understand. How those contrasting approaches, their logic and emotions, could spark some friction.
Yeah, it's like having 2 master chefs in the kitchen.
Ooh, I like this analogy.
Each with their own unique style. They both want to create an amazing meal, but
they have different methods, different ingredients.
exactly. And sometimes those differences can lead to like a culinary masterpiece, and other times, well,
Let's just say it could get messy.
right.
So how does this culinary clash actually play out in a real relationship?
Well, let's take decision making, for example.
Okay.
The 1, with their strong moral compass, tends to make decisions based on what they believe is right, with conviction. They often see things in black and white, right and wrong. Not much ambiguity there.
And the 5, I imagine, is a completely different approach.
Totally. The 5 will analyze every single angle.
Oh, wow.
Research every option, maybe even create like complex decision-making models.
I could see that.
And they might take a while to reach a conclusion.
Which could be frustrating for the one who wants to act, make a decision.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one partner is ready to hit the gas and the other is still studying the map.
Oh, that's a good one. And what about the 5's need for solitude?
Ah.
Doesn't that sometimes clash with the one's desire to, be more social?
Definitely. The one might feel a bit neglected if their partner's always retreating into their thinking space, right?
Yeah.
And the 5 might feel suffocated if they don't get their alone time.
It's all about balance, isn't it?
It is. Finding that sweet spot between togetherness and independence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not always about everyday situations, is it? How would these two handle, big life changes?
That's where things get really interesting. Let's say this couple has to relocate for a job.
Okay, big change.
The one, needing control when things are uncertain, will probably immediately start making lists.
Oh, yeah. To-do lists, researching neighborhoods, schools.
Maybe even color-coding moving boxes for maximum efficiency.
That sounds about right. What about the 5? I bet they are doing something completely different.
Totally. Picture them immersed in articles about the history of the new city.
Oh, wow.
The demographics, maybe even learning the local language.
Just for fun.
Exactly. They're both processing the change, but in their own ways.
So the one is building a fortress of to-do lists, and the 5 is building a mental map of their new reality.
You got it. And these different coping mechanisms can cause friction, especially if they don't understand and respect each other's approach.
Right. The one might see the 5's withdrawal as a lack of support.
Yeah, and the 5 might feel overwhelmed by the one's need for control.
It really highlights how important communication and empathy are, especially during those stressful times.
For sure. But let's not forget the incredible strength that these differences can bring. We're talking about compatibility here, not just conflict.
Right. They share intellectual curiosity, respect for boundaries, and a dedication to personal growth.
Those are pretty powerful assets for a relationship.
Imagine the one with their drive for action, helping the 5 step out of their mental bubble and engage more with the world.
And the 5, with their depth of knowledge, challenging the one to be more open-minded.
It's a pretty cool synergy when it works, right?
Absolutely. According to Personality NFT, the key is recognizing and appreciating those unique strengths.
It's about seeing differences as opportunities, not obstacles.
Exactly.
This has been so enlightening. But as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to shift gears a little.
Okay, yeah.
What can our listener, regardless of their Enneagram type, learn from this exploration? What can they take away and apply to their own relationships? So we've spent this whole deep dive exploring this really unique dynamic between the 1 and the 5.
We have.
What are the big takeaways for our listeners? No matter their Enneagram type, what can they apply to their own relationships?
Well, I think it comes down to really appreciating those differences. We've seen how the 1 and the 5, even though they have such different approaches, can actually complement each other. And I think that's true for any relationship.
So it's not about finding someone who's exactly like us, but someone who brings something different to the table.
Exactly. The Enneagram gives us a language to understand those differences.
I like analogies.
Imagine learning a new dance with a partner.
Okay, yeah.
At first, your steps might clash, you might stumble. But as you get to know each other's rhythms, you create something really beautiful and unique.
That's a great way to put it. It's about finding that flow, right? Even if there's a misstep or two along the way.
Exactly. And sometimes those missteps, those differences, can actually lead to the most growth.
With the 1 and the 5, we saw how the 1's desire for, improvement could inspire the 5 to actually use their knowledge and take action.
Right. And the 5's deep thinking could push the 1 to be more open-minded, to question things.
So it's like they each have a piece of the puzzle, and together they create this bigger picture.
Yeah, I like that. But of course, it's not always easy. We've talked about the communication challenges, the different ways they experience emotions, respecting each other's needs.
Right. It's not all sunshine and roses.
It's not. But compatibility isn't about never having those challenges. It's about how you face them together.
I see. It's about being open. Willing to compromise, really trying to understand your partner's point of view, even when it's different from your own.
Exactly.
So instead of seeing those differences as problems, we can see them as chances to grow, both as individuals and as a couple.
Absolutely. And the Enneagram can be such a helpful tool for that. It helps us to understand why our partner acts the way they do and to appreciate their strengths.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's amazing how understanding these personality types can, like, unlock so much about relationships.
It really is. It reminds us that we're all wired a little differently.
Yeah,
And those differences make human connections so interesting, don't they?
they really do. So to our listeners, as you think about the 1 and the 5, remember that what we've talked about today applies to all types, all relationships.
It does.
Embrace those differences, communicate openly and honestly, and always keep learning about yourself and the people you care about.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And who knows, you might even discover some unexpected compatibility along the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.